Good evening to everyone who's joined us today for today's MyCaptain Power Talks on how to crack tech interviews. MyCaptain Power Talks is powered by Qfuss, and Qfuss is a hassle-free cloud-based mentorship solution which allows you to connect with industry platforms and gives you aids you to help develop your skills by providing skill-based workshops. So our speaker today is Mr. Harsha Ravikumar. He's a product manager and lead at ERG GLEAM India at Microsoft. So he's a developer turned product manager and is assigned with the core functions engineering as a part of the cloud plus AI group. So without taking much of your time, I would hand it over to Mr. Harsha in order to introduce himself and also walk us through his journey so far.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. It's a great thing and great initiative you folks are doing, especially interacting with young minds who are probably confused in this whole pandemic scenario in terms of finding job opportunities, right? It's really important we give them the right direction in terms of how do you find it and what are the avenues they've got and how do you sort of prepare yourself. So a quick note about myself. I'm Harsha Ravikumar. My preferred pronouns are he and him. I am part of Microsoft for the last 6 years, close to. Unable to hear. Can you not hear me?
So if you can be a bit louder, it would be all right. Maybe try a headphone or sort if it's nearby you.
How is it now?
It's better. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay. Okay, cool. So I'm Harsha Ravikumar, and my pronouns are he and him. I joined Microsoft in 2015 as a software engineer straight out of college as a campus hire. And then I went on to be a part of the software engineering team under enterprise commerce, dealt with some complex commerce systems in Microsoft, basically working with our partners and the whole ecosystem of how we do our licensing deals and all that. Then I went on to taking up a new chapter of my life, which is to be a product manager. I've not done an MBA as of now, so I could really use my skills in terms of how can I best understand the product, and also use my technical skills, which I already had for a couple of years, and using which I made my foray into product management a year back. So currently I'm working as a product manager here in Microsoft. With the team called Employee Experience. We basically deal with enterprise level employees experience across Microsoft. And you will also see a lead ERG GLEAM India. So I'm also the lead for employee resource group. So GLEAM is our LGBTQI+ and allies resource group. So I lead efforts for Microsoft India in terms of D&I initiatives. Diversity and inclusion initiatives. So that's kind of my other part of the role with Microsoft. I've been doing that for the last 3 years. So yeah, and today I'm really here to learn from you folks and also share my experience and then also give you some hindsight information on what is the best thing to do with a tech interview. Again, this is not a proclamation as such. Everyone will have their own way of preparing. These are pointers for you, and I hope they make sense and help you in some ways.
Right. Thank you for your introduction, sir. So let's move on to the first question. The first question is, what are the things to keep in mind while preparing for a tech interview?
Great. Yeah. Really great question and fundamental question to start with. And I'm assuming this is a question, and there are 3 kinds of interviews you can give, right? Like you are a fresh graduate or you have some experience in hand, and then you are a very experienced professional. So I'll probably start in that same order. For a fresh graduate, we call them early in career, EIC. So for folks from early in career, I think you should really focus on your basics. DS, data structures, algorithms, system design, and basics to whatever you've read in your undergrad or postgrad, whatever you have theoretically read. that needs to be really strong. And a big thought process there people have is, will we really use this when we start working, right? While you prepare so hard on certain basic things which you have read, the next follow-up question would be like, once I'm hired, will I be really using the sort mechanisms or the data structures, or what is the optimized way of using a data structure, all those nitty-gritties? I would say no. You might not use it upfront directly like bubble sort or directly like an array sort or something, right? Like you wouldn't be using that in a direct way. But what will help companies is really create a differentiator amongst candidates. So if you have a very strong basics, because you don't have an experience for us to know what's your past experience like to evaluate better, or what is your previous company and what challenging problems have you solved in those companies. So those are differentiators for an experienced professional, right? But for an early in career person, we really don't have that differentiator. So the only differentiator then comes in is your basics. How strong are you with your basics? Because once you step into a corporate world, right, you'll be solving some challenging problems, and your problem solving techniques and solutions will directly affect the company's profit in some sense. So there is like direct correlation of what you do to the company's value in the market. Unlike your college simulated lab experiments, this is more like a real world problem solving, right? So here, unless you have a very strong basics, it's really hard for us to develop world-class solutions for the market or the consumers. So I think you really need to keep in mind that yes, basics are super critical. It sounds very mundane. Everybody tells that you need to be very strong in your basics. The only way to do it is practice more, understand the theory, live that theory in your brain, like really understand what exactly is that sort doing at a very basic level and not really at a problem level. Don't associate your theory with problem every time. Understand them at the really core level. For someone who is having experience, definitely the basics are super critical, right? Even if you're a 10-year experienced person, if they're not good at their DSN algorithms or data structures and DBMS and algorithms, there's a slight feedback given that, okay, the basics are not strong for this experienced person. But for experienced person, they can ask design questions. They can ask you system design kind of a question. So it's important to know that as well. Maybe my nudge to everybody is, while you're preparing, let's say you're referring Geeks for Geek or any online portal where there are a lot of problems already solved, you can look at them, because I learned most of my basics by seeing how people have solved problems. So rather than reading the theory, I went the other way around, where I saw the solutions first, and then I did the reverse engineering. This solution was achieved due to this kind of a theory, right? This kind of theorems or theories. Now, for example, if you're reading up about bit manipulations or something like that, if you're looking at those solutions, don't just look at the solution and keep practicing 100 solutions or 100 problems. Like, don't solve 100 problems. Rather, understand one solution or understand a couple of solutions, and then really backtrack on C and see why did they apply XOR, why did they apply AND, why did they apply this specific bit manipulation here, what's the theory behind it. I think that would be the right way to understand basics, because that we are not associating basics with solution. Rather, you know the basics strong, you can solve for any other problem. So yeah.
Yeah, a really insightful answer. So everybody start brushing up on their basics and keep in touch with that. So the next question is, what are employers looking for in a technical interview? What are the characters? What do they note?
Right. Let me start with one famous myth we may have. Like, I'm from Microsoft, and people think that we only hire C# developers. So we definitely, I'm going to start with that. I'm going to elevate this to most of the companies, because I am aware of several interviewers and recruiters across different companies. So I know what they look for. We don't look for technology unless we are specifically hiring for that technology, right? Like, suppose your job description says that for this role, we want you to know C#, we want you to know Java, because maybe that's the need of the hour for the team. that they want to fill, then they'll specifically look for technology. Otherwise, for an early in career, don't boggle upon the fact that, okay, this company is coming, maybe they're really looking for only C#. Let me just brush up only my C# skills or my Python skills or open source skills, right? Like what we rather look for now, and answering the question at hand, we rather look for people who have the ability to learn. Like, do you, while during the interview process, I'm sure we'll cover that in follow-up questions if we have, but while during the interview process, exhibit the learner mentality. Start showing up as you are someone who are here to learn, or you are not here to say that I know everything. You just give me a problem, I'll start solving. Rather, exhibit that ability to learn. That is something we look for. We really look for people who can understand the problem at the hand, really understand. So there are two things, right? Like you listen to the problem and you really understand the problem. So you want people who really understands the problem at hand and not just listen to it and start solving. And the last one is, how can you be more collaborative, right? We look for people who are collaborative, especially for a software engineer role. You need to be collaborative, collaborative across teams, because that will really help you work better in a more productive way. So all of them ties to having that learner's mindset. So if you are having the learner's mindset, you have a natural tendency to ask and understand better. And then you have a natural tendency to be more collaborative. So in nutshell, I would say we would really look for people who are exhibiting learner's mindset. And then don't fret on a language, like I said, right? Like if it's a company like Microsoft, don't fret that, okay, I should be really good at C#, otherwise this company might not hire me. That's not true. I had so many of my colleagues coming from Java background, coming from literally no experience on C#, just that they had strong fundamentals, like I said, and they had really good problem solving experience on Java. So all we need is that essence, that their learner mindset, they have their basics strong, they can fit into our company and start solving. And what we also see in people is, don't rush to solve the problem. Like if it's a technical interview, there's a natural tendency to rush to solve the problem. The moment you hear a problem, you're like, okay, let me take my paper pen and start solving. Don't do that. Or don't wait and think too much about solving it the most optimal way, right? Because we are so used to solving HackerRank, HackerEarth, and competitive online practicing way. What happens in an in-person or in a technical interview where probably not online tools are used, you have a natural tendency of thinking you're the most optimal solution, and that might take a lot of time of yours and interviewers. Rather discuss what comes to your mind instantly. Like if it's a brute force method of solving, it's okay, discuss. Just tell the interviewer that this is what I'm thinking. This is where I'm currently thinking when I hear this problem. And trust me, interviewers are not there to take your viva as such, right? Like we are not there to test how best are you with your knowledge. We are there to rather see how best can you fit into our company, in the team, in the domain we have. So when we are coming from that mindset, and if we are expecting our candidates to have collaborative mindset, the interviewers are also told that you have to be collaborative. You cannot go there as a teacher and taking somebody's viva or theory exam, right? So we are there to collaborate. So we will collaborate with you if you take that step and start bringing us in the solving problem. So don't just start solving the most optimal way and take some more time. Rather discuss the problem, that solution that's coming into your brain. And the last one I want to add is, at least in few of the companies I know, there is no more test role, right? There were days when we had developer, and then there was test, and then there is services, which is DevOps, services to the product or maintenance of the product, right? Now all of us are somewhere moving towards DevOps model, where you develop, you test, and you release, and you maintain it as you are the first line of person who is probably triaging the production bugs or customer escalations, right? Like you are doing all that as a software engineer. So it's important you also have test-driven solution. So whatever code you write during the technical interview or whatever problem you're trying to solve, while you're starting itself, you should think of the test cases, how you are going to, prove that this is the best solution or this is the right solution for the problem. So if I have to summarize, what are we looking for? We are looking for people who are there who are exhibiting learners mindset, who are collaborative with us, who is also not like solving it for the solution, but rather solving it for the problem. Like understanding the problem you need to solve for that and not the solution you already know or a couple of solutions you've already read and start applying that at the instant. And the last one is we really want people to have test-driven approach. We want testing to be a core essence of a software engineer. You cannot, because gone are those days where you had a significant goal as such, which was to test for you whatever code you write. But since it's all in one game now, we want the developers to also know how to write test-driven code. So yeah, we probably look for these stuff in our technical interview.
There's a small follow-up question to your answer there. That is how do you display this ability to learn, or what are the things that you usually, what are the traits that translates to I'm a learner?
Right, great question. I mean, again, these are all behavioral aspects, right? Like this might not come naturally to everybody, and we really understand that, right? We know that there are introverts, there are extroverts, there are different kind of people who have different characteristics when put in a tension situation, right? Like we understand all that. But basic traits, if I have to tell in a very simple nutshell, is people who ask a lot of questions before solving. So you hear a question from an interviewer. Let's say you solve for so and so. Like for example, you hear a question something as simple as, let me give you a string and I want you to reverse the string without using some constraint, right? They give you some constraint. Now, actually what will happen is I've seen so many people just take their pen and start solving it, like start writing pseudocode, start writing the algorithm, start putting in the data into their solution and the instant reaction, because I'm telling you that happens because of the way we have coded the education system in some ways that question, answers, exam, results. So there's a different topic of discussion there. But try to break that. So you hear a question, we love people who ask follow-up questions. We don't want people who are here to just listen to us and start doing work, right? We want collaborative people. So maybe ask follow-up question. Just ask, what kind of string would you pass? Do you have any length in mind? Is there a max characters? Can I think of any max characters? All questions related to that problem only, right? And some interviewers will definitely help you and will really like the way you are asking questions and give you more detail. I would say most of our interviews will probably solve it with you. They'll tell you, oh, you started with this, okay, take this more help hint. They'll give you, okay, for now let's take 10 characters and see where it goes. Then you're solving, you start solving, and then you're stuck somewhere. You can just ask another follow-up question. Hey, while I was solving this, here's where I had another follow-up question which I forgot to ask at that point. Can you help me with this data point, or can you help me with this another information if you can? Now the interviewer will remodel the question and probably give you another hint how to solve. So these are the traits as a learner or a collaborative person you can exhibit, where you make it more interactive, right? And not like a real college environment where you have a teacher and a solution provider or a student, right? So I would just say ask more questions. And it's okay if you have a feeling that you're asking a stupid question, or I personally feel that there's nothing called a stupid question in this world. Every question is so important. So even if you feel in your back of your mind that you're asking the question which probably doesn't make sense, ask. That's okay. If the interviewer wants to answer, they will. If not, the standard way they do is assume. They'll just say, okay, why don't you assume and solve? That just means that even they are probably not aware of the question you just asked. So the best way to solve is you rather make an assumption and solve. But my most push is, if it's difficult for you, if your personality doesn't let you do a lot of communications, practice. it really helps. You can practice with your friends. Whenever you're doing an online preparation with Geeks for Geek or something, write down that question and talk to the mirror and just talk to the mirror and practice and see how that goes. Make it more interactive is what I would say.
All right. So the conclusion we draw from here is an interview should be a two-way conversation and not a one-way conversation. Yeah. So
I mean, I personally don't like it if it becomes a one-way conversation, or rather, if it and especially when it was offline interviews. Now you can multitask. While I've given some problem to someone, I can literally multitask on my emails or something while they are solving. But in an offline interviews, imagine the interviewer literally has nothing else to say, and just look at the candidate for some time while they're trying to figure out, right? So make it more interactive, make it more two-way communication, and involve them in your thought process. That's the best thing you can do. Not like directly asking, is this the solution? Is this the right solution? But rather involve them in that process of thinking. And that will be the best thing you can do in an interview.
So let's go to the next question. This is, what are the kind of questions one can expect in a technical interview?
Sure. I'm definitely not going to give a list of questions because it's already up there. I think there are amazing set of online resources which has list of questions which people have shared based on their experiences, and also maybe go through that. But what I would cover is, maybe if it's an hour-long interview, and mostly with virtual interviews, we are looking at keeping it an hour, because there's a study that says that you shouldn't sit for long in front of a computer for more than an hour. You should stretch and wake up and give that brain a little relax moment. So maybe if it's an hour's interview, people will ask for one or two data structures or algorithm-based questions, right? If it's like the first few rounds. If it's going towards the last few rounds where they are really looking at candidates to identify the best candidate for the role, maybe they can switch towards design questions, maybe high-level design, low-level design, where they ask you to design a specific problem, and then they'll see how you think of the problem and bring all the approaches together. Not just coding. It might not be just write a pseudocode or write a code for this problem. It would be a more like a design question. How does your brain think in terms of designing a whole solution? And like I said, if it's a very specific technology based, like if I'm looking for a UX or a UI developer, not a backend developer, or if I'm looking for a full stack developer, then I might scrape through your resume and pick out specific questions from the resume. Like if I'm looking for a UX or a UI developer, and your resume mentions something related to UX, UI, maybe a certification or previous experience or something, right? Internship or anything, then maybe I can go over resume-based questions as well. But most often for campus, we don't go deeper on resume because it would be a pretty generic resume across all the campus students, right? Like everybody would have done the same set of basic studies in their engineering or post-graduation, right? So resume-based questions are a little less, but if in case, like I said, I'm more keen to fill in a specific domain, like a finance or a specific domain on UX, then I might delve a little deep on those resume-based questions. And also on resume, if I have to ask, be prepared to answer if people ask, especially behavioral rounds, not just technical, but there can be a behavioral technical round. Like it could be a tech round plus they might go into a behavioral question. Maybe there they might ask you questions on what was the most complex thing you have solved so far in terms of technical problems, if you have any in terms of internships. What did you do in your internship? What was the challenging part in your internship? How did you solve? How did the team solve? So things around how did you react as a team and things like that. But if you look at tech interview, the earlier few interview will be really strong on your algorithms, design, data structures, system design, and especially if the team is very core, like a kernel level system programming, then maybe they would go that side as well. So yeah, those are the type of questions you can expect, but I'm sure specific questions are there available online, so you can just go through them a day or two before.
All right, so that's what the next question is about. Where can we find these specific questions before attending, say, your dream interview or so? Like, don't just give us an answer like the web, but any websites or
Yeah. No. I think I was definitely preparing for this talk today, and I went back to my college days and I was seeing what was I doing, and definitely there's a world changed in 5-6 years. So I had to get back to interviewers and do some research around my team and see what is the new thing people are doing and what makes more sense. So I definitely have some names. So I'm going to read them out. People have suggested that there's lead code for problem solving. You should get on there and solve a lot of problems. But keep in mind, I think what I want to repeat again and again, that while you're solving problems, please keep a mind on what basics are you applying. Don't just solve problems. Like that will really help you to an extent to think like a problem solver. But when they ask you really hard basic questions, like for example, you have written a solution and they just pick on you and say that, why did you apply this sort API? Or why did you use this function for this sort? Now you cannot say that it's an available function in Python, hence I used, right? Like that shouldn't be the answer. You should rather then you should switch to your basics and say that this is the property of this function. This is how the function performs in terms of performance, scale, blah blah blah. And that's where you're going to exhibit your basics. So while you're solving in lead code, please have in mind that you know the basics what you're applying there. Geeks for Geek, I think I've repeated multiple times. You'll just know better concepts there, and also some experiences and questions from the previous rounds, right? System design, that's a really important part. I think I know not many companies focus on it for an early in career, but some of the companies do, just to sort of prick the student's brain and see how do they think in terms of system design. Now, system design questions would be like, I would say YouTube, because that's what I used. It has good amount of resources, or even Google blog or Bing certain blogs. Famous companies, pick up famous companies and see how is their system designed. How do they handle concurrency? How do they handle scale? Right? How is their reliability so efficient? For example, Book My Show, Uber, Hotstar. Like, how does Hotstar handle the concurrency? There are like millions of people watching India versus Pakistan. One way to solve that is you throw a lot of servers to that problem. You have so many servers that there's no problem for anybody who logs in. But then that's not the best way, right? Like that's not the most efficient way for the company to solve. So look at how did Hotstar solve it? How did Hotstar envision this problem, and how did they solve for concurrency? How does YouTube solve for concurrency? Because there are like so many people streaming videos nonstop, right? So system design, I don't have a specific book as such. Grouping is another way you can. There's a book on grouping for system design. Maybe read up that or watch videos. But ideally know how concurrency or how a scale problem is solved with a design question. That way you just know that how do you apply certain principles there. And most importantly, look for what kind of company you are applying for, or what kind of company your interview is scheduled. That will help you narrow down some of your preparations. And classic way of preparing is giving more interviews. I think nobody tells you this, or probably a lot of people tell you this. Don't put a pressure on yourself that you have to clear this round or this interview, right? Like you need to clear more interviews, or you need to give more interviews to practice. That's the best way to put your studies or preparation to test. So one way we, especially the experienced folks, solve it is, if I have a dream company, or if I'm looking for a specific job switch, I don't apply for that company very first time. I apply it after a few companies or after a few rounds in a different company, because that way I'm prepared to give interview. Because let me say that again, giving interview is really a skill on itself. It's as much I can speak and give all the knowledge I have. Maybe there can be so many such follow-up sessions you can host. It's a skill a person has to develop. The skill of solving, the skill for collaboratively solving is something you have to develop over time. And I would just say that these materials will only give you the theoretical knowledge to that skill. The only way to hone that skill is by practicing more. So I would just suggest that take mock interviews, talk to few people like us. We are happy to take mock interviews. So reach out to more people like us who are already in the corporate, take mock interviews, and you'll get really good on the on the spot feedback, right? So yeah, Lead Code, Geeks for Geek, and Cracking the Coding Interview is an amazing book. I think I still have Cracking the Coding Interview, Cracking the PM Interview. These are some of the books you should probably buy and keep it forever. They are not just for interviews; they are really like really good source of encyclopedia. I still have Cracking the Coding Interview with myself. So that is one thing I would suggest in terms of book. But nowadays everything is online, so I would just suggest go to these websites and start practicing.
That was a really insightful answer, sir. So let's move on to the next question. This is, what are the different rounds in an interview? Like, how many rounds does it take for you to actually reach the tech, or is it the tech first and then you move? So can you walk us through these rounds?
Yeah. Again, it depends on company to company, but there's no standard as such, but you would definitely have a screening round these days. Even for an experienced professional, not early in career, but someone who is having experience, we are doing a screening round, which is more easy, right? Like it could be a Hacker Rank or Hacker Earth or some online competitive platform where we throw up some existing questions for the candidates to solve, and it gives us a good feedback on who gave the most optimal solution, who passed the most corner cases, test cases, and all that. So screening round, be prepared for that. The only way to do that is practice more on those platforms, right? Like practice more on Lead Code, practice more on Hacker Rank. So screening is definitely there these days. It just helps us take the choke on the recruitment team to review a lot of resumes. Just remove that choke on the system. So it just makes it more easier. So be prepared for screening. Straight after that, you'll have technical rounds. So, and screening round sometimes can be telephonic, but like I said, I think we are moving away from that traditional way of telephonic conversations to more of screening online problem solving methods. And then you'll have 2 to 3 tech rounds, 2 at the minimum for sure, where they'll really focus on your technical skills, your problem solving skills, your more of basics, how strong are you with your basics. Could you suggest the best book for tech interviews? Cracking the Coding Interview. And then after the 2 to 3 rounds of tech interview, there would be a hiring manager round. And this is when probably we have shortlisted more candidates. Maybe the funnel is narrowing now after the 2 to 3 rounds of technical round. Hiring manager would be technical plus behavioral. So it can swing both ways. So if the hiring manager wants to test further on your technical skills, they can just make it all technical again. Or if they want to know more of you, who you are, what kind of a personality do you bring into the team, then it can be a technical plus behavioral. In the last round, some people call it DNI round, some people call it as appropriate round, some people call it culture fit round. While I'm not a fan of the word culture fit because there's no one way to fit somebody to a culture, but as appropriate round is the final round, which would happen probably with a more senior leader in the organization. And that would be mostly behavioral, but there were cases where I have seen even as appropriate was turned into a tech round because maybe the candidate pool is so close that to arrive at the final candidate or the final job offer to who to give, maybe they wanted to do another round of tech interview. So for a software engineer, be prepared to give tech interviews in any interview. Like they might tell you, the recruiter might tell you that this will be a behavioral question, or this would be like basic, know yourself kind of a round, but just be prepared for technical round at any point of time is what I would say. But roughly five rounds of interviews and one screening, so close to 5 to 6 rounds.
Right. So let's move on to the next question. So what are the fundamentals that that every candidate should have before entering into a tech review? Does it mean that you need to know a vast amount of languages, or what's the approach there?
Right. I would have started with that. Don't boggle upon knowing all the languages in the world, especially like I said, like Microsoft, C# or some other company, Python. It's difficult, right? Like you need to hone your skill on your basics, concentrate on that, pick up 1 or 2 languages. Python definitely, I would suggest, my personal suggestion, because the GitHub survey says that there are so many repositories on GitHub which is purely Python projects. So that just says that it's one of the most used languages. So maybe Python and any other OOP languages, which could be your C# or Java or C++, as simple as C++, but pick up 1 or 2 max. And these days interviews happening virtually, so be prepared to write a code on a shared IDE. Like it could be a shared development environment where you may have to write code and it could execute then and there. So I'm very sure C++ and Python will be supported in most of the IDEs. There's no way a company can say we will not support it. So that way you're just narrowing down your languages to just 1 or 2. Be comfortable with doing online coding. And some interviewers love to throw a problem on making you solve it on a Word document. Like there is no auto suggestions, there is no autofill, nothing of that sort. So if you're picking up on languages now, again, if you have more languages in your hand, you get confused while solving that problem. So if you have very, very limited, like 2 strong languages at your hand, then when you're asked to write a code on a Word document, then you'll be more comfortable because you know the syntax and everything very in your fingertips. So I would say don't hog upon knowing most number of languages. Like I said, we look for learner mindset. So we've hired people from Java background who didn't have any C# knowledge. All we know is once you're in the company, we know for a sure fact that you would learn anything that's required for that job, right? Like that means you would learn new languages, you would learn new updates and whatnot. And also, yeah, don't switch languages again. If you are someone who is already comfortable with 3 languages or 4 languages, now just because Harsha Ravikumar said stick to 2 languages, don't just unlearn or start forgetting stuff. It's okay to have more languages, but when you're giving an interview for that round, don't switch languages unless asked, right? Like you're solving 2 problems. Don't solve 1 in Python, 1 in C# just to show that you know more languages. That doesn't work well. You might get a little tensed in that moment as well. And you may make some simple mistake which can be used against you when it comes to that evaluation between 2 people. It could be a negative marker there, right? So don't switch in the same interview. If you're comfortable with 1, stick to that. Unless they say that, no, use only Python for this problem, or use only C# or use only C or assembly level languages, I don't know. But if they specifically ask, then yes, but I would suggest don't switch.
Right. So a small follow-up question to this. So does this also depend upon the domain that you are applying for? Like, are these two languages general, or is it something that we need to know if you're applying for a specific domain, say like web development or something like that?
That's a great question. I think it would apply. It's a good to have. Like you would definitely know what company is coming, what's the job description. I'm sure that would be aware to you a couple of days back. Now, if you have this in your pursuit, I would say bring it on, prepare for that language. Otherwise, please have generic 2 most asked language. You can just probably Google this and you will get 2 or 3 or top 10 languages, right? Like maybe hone on 2 of them. And it's okay to say that you are comfortable on Python. Like you can walk into a Microsoft interview and just say that I don't know Java, I don't know C Sharp. I'm very comfortable with Python or C or Java or whatnot or C, C++, whatever. And tell the interviewer upfront that when they ask you the problem to solve for, just make a casual remark or casual feedback answer saying that, can I solve this in this language because I'm more comfortable there? That should solve for it. Nobody will say that, no, because you are uncomfortable, start doing it in a different way. So I would say pick up 2 generic languages so that you're very like a master in those, you know APIs, you know the syntax, everything A to Z. And then if you know a domain specific language that is getting asked, like specifically, like you said, web development, maybe a specific UX developer or UI developer, then more towards JavaScripting or a scripting language would help when you're solving.
Let's move on to the next question. So this is there any danger in being too rehearsed or over prepared for an interview? Does it affect negatively?
I mean, no. I'll tell you why that is a no. It's not a danger, like, right? Because the person who is taking your interview once in their life would have given interview. And when anybody gives interview, you are supposed to prepare. You don't walk into an interview just like that, waking up one fine day, right? Like you would prepare. And we definitely told all the interviewers are aware that there can be candidates who sound prepared, right? Like there can be, you're so prepared that it might look like it is a well prepared or quote unquote rehearsed solution. That is okay. I mean, that's what we have told. Don't panic the candidate that, oh, you sound so rehearsed or nothing of that sort. So it's okay to prepare. So that this question doesn't mean that should I stop preparing last 3 days and just be calm and not sound too rehearsed or all that. No, don't fret on that. Don't think too much on that. It's okay to be prepared. But be prepared rather where the interviewers can test how are you agile with solving the problem. So what would happen is, now, if I look at the candidate and if I see that this candidate sounds very well rehearsed or very well prepared, or for example, let's say a very, very good case, like you are so passionate about data structures that you've probably done research on data structures, written papers on data structures. And as an interviewer, I might not be that confident on their data structure. I just know basics rather. Now, when you are answering as a candidate, you will sound super confident, right? Because you've basically read probably 10 books on data structures by now. You know the concepts in and out. Now, what I would do to test whether you really know the concept is change the problem in between. While you're solving the problem, I would probably stop you and give you a new data point or change the problem direction or something. Now, that is where your preparedness goes for a toss, because if there's a specific way Greeks for Geeks has solved, and if you have by-hearted it or literally practiced it like 100 times, and if there's any change in that problem flow, unless you're prepared in your basics, you will not be able to answer it. You'll go blank. Like, why is there a change in the flow of thinking, right? So be prepared for that, because that is what we have educated our interviewers, that the moment you see well-prepared candidate, don't just get bothered on that fact that, okay, this is like a rehearsed or a by-hearted solution this person is giving. Rather change the problem and see whether this person is still able to solve. So no, it's not a danger. If it's a danger, the danger is when they change the problem and you're not able to solve it further.
That was really insightful. So be ready for all sudden quicks, twists and turns in the problem statement. So let's move on to the next question. Do people typically judge the presentation of your answer as much as the content, how you present and what you're presenting?
Not for an early in career candidate. You are a college graduate. I don't see that your job description would want us to put you on stage and present the problem to a leadership or something, right? Like, I don't see that. Nor do I see that you would write emails for stakeholders, all that. Like that is a role done by a senior leader or a senior engineer or an architect. So there are different people to do that. So for an early in career, presentation skills is definitely not something really like a bottleneck. but you may want to practice how logical are you when you're speaking, right? Like if there are cases where I've seen that folks are so good at problem solving, but they have this natural tendency to not explain it well, how they've solved it. So maybe that's again a skill. That's not something I would say that everybody has it or nobody has it. It's a skill people can develop, just like you develop how to speak English, just like you develop how to cook or something, right? Like it's a skill you develop by practice. So what I would rather suggest is, instead of practicing it on your presentation skills or the most effective communications or English or all that, just concentrate on, are you able to logically explain this back to the interviewer? Like you've solved something. If I ask you to walk me through your solution, you just walk me through your solution, how you just solve it. Just logically explain in a more coherent way. That's more than enough. Unless you are giving an interview for a very senior role or an architect role, there definitely we would look for communication skills, because that's part of your job description, but not an early in career, because it's just too much burden on that individual. No point.
So that's a ray of hope, you can say, maybe. So let's go to the next question. Is it okay to not know an answer?
Yes, I mean, definitely yes. Imagine learner's mindset. So I said learners, they don't know. They start with that basic assumption that I don't know, right? So it's okay to say I don't know the answer. But that doesn't mean that you stop there and say, okay, give me next question, right? Like suppose you don't know the answer, I would say collaboratively arrive at some solution, ask some follow-up question. Like I said, you might not know the answer the first time you hear the problem. Ask some question, ask some follow-up question and see if something strikes. Maybe some brainstorming, think of it like a brainstorming with your friend, right? Like you both don't know the answer even starting with, but you would arrive at some discussion or some logical closure to that topic. So I would say when you don't know the answer, I would suggest be prompt about it, be open about it, ask more follow-up questions and see if you can strike some solution. Can you give me an example to this? Okay, I think the example is for not knowing an answer, right? Like for example, if somebody asks me right now, what is a bubble sort? I actually don't know. I might not know on top of my mind with the exact algorithm, right? Now I would ask a follow-up question like, can you help me understand where is this bubble sort meant to be applied for? Is there a situation or a larger problem, or do you just want me to answer what bubble sort is? Now the interviewer would say, maybe they'll say, okay, I can give you a situation for it. Here's the problem. Here is what we are dealing with. We have so many data points coming in, and we want to apply some sorting mechanism to identify what came first or what came second. And that's where I want you to figure out if we can solve it bubble sort. Now, if I remember what bubble sort is, and maybe not exactly the pseudocode or the algorithm, but largely I know, okay, this is how bubble sort works, I can answer. Otherwise, I could just say that at this moment, I'm not aware of, I'm somehow not able to remember bubble sort. Is it okay if I apply another sorting mechanism? Maybe you're so confident about some other sorting technique. Just build on that, right? Like, is it okay if I apply this? They say that, never mind, we'll just go to the next question, right? So what I would, as an interviewer, infer there is this person is very honest about their skills and what they know. So if I hire this person tomorrow, and if there's a situation in the team where something's not going right or some problem we are all together trying to solve, I know this person is in a learner's mindset and I can brainstorm with this person. This person is not expecting me as a senior resource or as a manager to give them a solution which is, or give them a problem which is so articulate and fitting their arena, right? Like I know that I can throw any problem at this person and they will sit with me and probably brainstorm and think, do a blue sky thinking or do something, right? It will not be like I have to always think, okay, with this person, he's very comfortable, or he or she or they are very comfortable with Python. Okay, I have to always think of, okay, let me direct only Python projects or Python problems to them. I don't have to hire like that, right? So when you don't know, try to arrive at some solution if you can. if you really don't know and it's something you have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, be upfront and just say that, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to answer that. I don't know that. That's it.
All right. So what we have to actually overcome is the anxiety and the fear at that moment when we don't know a particular answer, and just be upfront about it.
I'm going to go back to the education system and the whole construct of knowing it all. I think we throw this pressure on people that you have to know it all. You cannot know it all. Like, we still use, for a reason, for a reason, there are so many websites and blogs and answers. And I don't want to take names, but there are reasons where even professionals go there and look for solutions, right? Like, if there's a problem I'm solving in my work, there are so many days I've gone to that website and I've seen that, is there anybody else who's solved this, who's encountered this problem, right? Like, that is the essence of how we look for a candidate. So we don't want someone who is know-it-all. We rather want someone who is want to be learning it all. So that anxiety should go. So train yourself and tell yourself that, I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. Given an opportunity, will I learn it? Yes, definitely I will learn it and I'll solve it for you. And if there's a company which is rejecting you because you didn't know a solution to a project, I would say it's a good choice. They didn't. It's not a conducive environment to work. I would say it's a good thing happened.
All right, so let's move on to the next question. How has the interview process changed after the pandemic?
I mean, of course, the IDE has come in. The shared development environment has come in, which is more easier for candidates to write code and all that. Like, that is one. The good part, I'll start with the good part. The other good part is it's more comfortable because you are in your own space. You are in your comfort space. You're not in a different office. You're not in someone else's space, right? Like, this human psychology always analyzes threat based on the environment you are put in, right? That's how the psychology works. So if you are in a new environment, new place, and you are giving an interview and you need that job, there's so much level of, like you said, anxiety playing and the fear of unknown playing. That goes missing here because you are in your comfort zone. You know your house, you know where you are sitting. So that's definitely a good part to it. Now, the sad part is the micro expression we are missing, right? If I'm an interviewer and if I'm in a room, and if I've given a problem, and if the person is genuinely struggling to understand a problem, there are instances where we would have given hints, or we would have given some follow-up information so that they can solve better. That is only through micro expressions, right? Like, we can gauge that when you are in the same room and you're looking at the candidate literally all the time. That is missing virtually because you're on a webcam and this 3x4 or a 6x7 division of video. What best can you gauge from the person, right? They could be more anxious. So that is the sad part of virtual engagement, that we are missing that human touch to it. But there are more pros to it, which is making it more seamless, making it more economical, and making it more scalable. I can take interviews literally everywhere, anywhere in the corner of the world. I don't expect them to fly them to my offices. That's how it has changed. Other than that, the process has not changed. There are still 5 to 6 rounds. There are still coding rounds. They are still looking for problem solving. So that definitely remains the same. It's just the modality has changed, I would say.
All right, so let's move on to the last question. How much what's the weightage on, say, behavioral characteristics and culture and values when it comes to a technical interview? What's the weightage there?
I can definitely talk about my company. I don't want to preach what others are doing. In Microsoft, there's this saying that we hire employees for Microsoft. That's the motto we give for our interviewers. That means that we want candidates or people to fit the culture and the ecosystem and the values of Microsoft, right? We don't hire for a team. We do that sometimes, but in general, the approach is that we hire an employee for Microsoft, not Microsoft India, not Microsoft Hyderabad, not Microsoft Redmond. That that whole barrier of location and even not even sometimes like I said, the last couple of rounds where they would dwell a little more on behavioral aspects. There is where they really look for whether the candidate fits the culture of Microsoft. I wouldn't use I'm not a fan of the word fit, but whether the candidate adds value to our culture. That is the right way to put, right? Like, and that is not a rocket science, right? Like, that's not like, oh, there's a specific culture a company follows. Is it like a cult sort, right? It's just not. And like I said, learners' ability, growth mindset. How can you think more diverse or more inclusively support in case that comes in or if that is happening? But in general, it's the adaptability and learners' mindset and collaboration and all that, because I think all companies have now understood that the more collaborative environment you create, the better innovation you can drive. Like, you may see that all companies are now doing hackathons and whatnot. Like, hackathons are the fundamental idea behind collaboration, right? Like, you're literally pushing 10 people to do something unique in the 1 hour of time. So a lot of companies have understood this real gem of a thought, that the collaborative it is, the most productive it is, the most productive the environment is, the better innovative solutions you can get. The less the siloed it is, I mean, silo as in the more individualistic it becomes, like, I solve for my problem, then I go home. I don't care what my other team members are doing. The more we do that, at some point, the innovation stops because there's just one brain thinking at every problem. So it is important. I don't have a ratio, like percentage as such, but it's definitely very much important because all the companies are now looking at having people who can add value to their culture. So it's definitely important. And that's why it's put in the last, and I want to clear that, right? Like, would it outweigh your technical skills? I don't think so sometimes. That's why it's put in towards the end. So we really want to know how good you are with your core development skills, technical skills, your basics as a software engineer. And then we bring in the behavioral aspects because that is also important.
Well, that was really an insightful answer. So let's move on to some questions from the crowd. So the first question, like this gets asked a lot in our community, is how to bag tech internships, like, and how important are they for getting jobs in, say, dream companies?
Look out for okay, just to take a step back, most of the companies now have identified that internship and college hire is a different talent acquisition problem than lateral hire or experienced person hire. So there are different teams that is solving for every company. So it's called UR, which is University Relationships under Technical Acquisition, Talent Acquisition, sorry. And then there is regular talent acquisition, which is probably hiring from industry. So the UR are now understanding the importance of opening up the doors more generically, right? Like, gone are those days where they're specifically going to certain industry, certain institutes to hire interns. Now it's more like a competitive exam or a competitive way. So look out for those things. That's the best way to, get into an internship. There are sometimes intern referral programs running in few companies. So I would say network well on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a real, not because we own it, but it's a really, really good place to network. So network on LinkedIn and follow up with people to just casually say hi, hello, and figure out if they're running any intern referral program. Some companies do it. We have done it in the past, but then in the last few years, 1 year or so, we have not done. On the contrary, what we have done is we have opened up these online methodologies where we have opened up competitive kind of an exam for everybody, and then we do multiple rounds after that. So we host events like walk-in events sort. Now, how important it is to get an internship? It's any day important. If you have a foot in the door, you have an opportunity to show the people how valuable you are for the company. And over the past, I've seen a lot of PPOs with interns, especially with Microsoft and a few of the other companies I know. It's not an act of goodwill the companies are now doing. Before it was, It was like, okay, get young blood to the team and just see how you can gel along. But it's now more a dedicated investment companies are doing, because we have understood that the interns are really adding value to your talent ecosystem in the company. So it's really important. If you're able to back them, I would say that's nothing like it.
All right. That's, that ought to be a bit motivating for students to look out and take up such opportunities. So moving on, we have another question. Some of the attendees want a little bit of more elaboration when it comes to group discussions. Can you provide some tips there?
Right. I don't know if it's a very, I feel it's a very old traditional way of interviewing, especially with virtual world. There is very less opportunity to do that. Like, how do you have a group discussion on a Teams call where at a point only one person can literally speak? Otherwise, there's like speaker and mic issues happening, right? But in general, if you ask me, so these are all mass eliminators, what I call, right? Like, they just help the company run a mammoth of an event. That's it. It's if you ask me personally, what's my perspective, it's definitely not the right way to evaluate a candidate. Putting 10 people together, there could be different kinds of people in that group. Like I said, introvert, extrovert, based on their characteristics, understanding, spontaneity. There's so much human psychology playing in a group discussion, right? Like, that's definitely not a best way to evaluate a software engineer, if you ask me. Maybe for other roles, it may still play good. But if companies are doing it, then it's purely to eliminate in mass. I don't know how best can you identify who's the best, because I have not done that in the past. I have not worked as a recruiter, but the question, how would GD define, is probably clarity of thought. And how do you, again, if I want, I can really put in collaborative approach there as well. Like, suppose if it's a 5 people group discussion, it's not about shouting down 4 people to answer. Like, that's what people initially think, that okay, if it's a group discussion, naturally one person becomes the leader and they start driving the conversation, shouting down people, and making it a one person show. It's not that. We would rather not take such people, because it just looks that this person wants to hog everybody's attention and be there. Rather, how do you make it more interactive and collaborative? Like I know that there's this strong push for being more inclusive in meetings. So if there's 10 people in a meeting and somebody is not talking, then you have to create an opportunity for that person to contribute, right? Like, maybe that is something you can try in a group discussion, that don't shout 10 people, put your voice out, and then listen to 10 more people also, and make space for others. If I was a recruiter and if I am doing group description, I would definitely pass this candidate who's making space for others after speaking. That's like the best thing you can do in a company, right? Like, you are creating that system or an ecosystem for people to speak. That is super important. But in general, it's just done to eliminate in mass. That's it, if you ask me.
So let's move on to the next question from the crowd. This is what's the impact of showcasing or carrying out projects, personal projects, and showcasing them on your resume?
Right. I think I when I gave interview long back, my interviews were, one round was all about my project. So what happens, like I said, interviewers can decide whether they want to go technical on problem solving, give you some problems and see how you solve, or they want to really want to know you, like I said, a behavioral question or something. In that case, they would really latch onto your projects and what you've done, how you developed it, what was the problem you were trying to solve. And if you're a group of people, how did you distribute work? How did you collaboratively come up with solutions? So all of that. So your project will really define how you work in a group, especially if it's a group project. If it's a single owned project, then you'll just be able to talk about how you solved a problem. But if you ask me, it will really help if the interviewer decides to go on resume route. It will really help, because now you are controlling the conversation, because you know the project, you know what you did in the project, you exactly know what you didn't solve in that project, or what you try to apply some duct tape in that project, or what are the open bugs in the project, whatever. you have the complete authority of the story, right? Of the narrative, not the interviewer. The interviewer is probably listening to you. So it's a good opportunity for you to land certain key traits of who you are. What basis should we choose the project? Something that complements your current subjects will definitely help. And also internship, whatever project you've done there, that will help. Other than that, if you ask me personally, if you are putting projects, which is, I developed a website, I developed a mobile application, it's great. I would say it's not a bad thing because you're investing your time in developing something and you're learning something. But would that capture my attention? I don't think so, because that's definitely something a lot of people are doing, right? Unless you mention that this is like 10 million downloaded app, then I'll be like, wow, let me talk more about it, right? Unless it's that, or choose projects which is very heavy on concept. Like my project was knuckle recognition when I did like 5 years ago. I'm sure there's more advanced in that field right now, but your knuckles are biometric, right? Unless, apart from your thumbs, even your knuckles are very unique to every person. So my project was a knuckle recognition system, which sounds very lame because why would somebody put their knuckle in any of the instrument? But it's just a project because I was very interested in, I was very fascinated with recognition and machine AI recognition and all that. And I used MATLAB. MATLAB, if people know, it has everything. You don't literally have to code much in that software. You have lot of pre-inbuilt APIs and functions and packages there. So I used MATLAB. And I was not ashamed of saying that I used an existing package to solve this problem. But I knew the Swift on the surf papers, and I knew the exact basics of how exactly is it able to, that function or package is able to identify this knuckle as Harsha's knuckle. That theoretical knowledge is what I had. Now, I literally passed my whole interview talking about my knuckle project for literally 45 minutes, right? So that way, use projects as your strong skills. You can really hold the conversation for end to end because that person really doesn't know anything. They just know that you mentioned something. And if that person is from AI and machine learning background, maybe they can contribute some parts, but still you own the narrative. You completely own the narrative. So be sure of that. And I would always suggest do projects which is unique or aligning to your studies. Don't do just for the sake of it. Don't start developing websites and applications and mobile applications, which everybody's doing. Do it for your learning, but don't rely on that I will just use it as my showstopper in my resume.
So I think that's the last question we'll take up, and we'll wind up the session. So just before closing, Harsha, I would like you to sum up today into maybe 4 or 5 key takeaways that the students can keep note of.
Key takeaways, I would really start with, don't panic in an interview. I know it's a very cliched statement to say. It's like throwing someone into the swimming pool and say, don't panic, right? Like unless, right, it's a standard way. But imagine, unless you've learned how to swim, unless you've really practiced how to swim, you would never be panicked, right? And you would really instantly pick it up your breath and you start swimming. It's the same logic applied to your interviews. It's a vast, imagine it's a very deep pool. You really need to know your basics. You need to practice it. You need to take mock interviews. You need to take probably 2-3 interviews to get better. Don't put that pressure that the first interview I have to give, I will nail it. It might not happen. Just for the record, I gave 8 interviews in the last year of my college, and the 9th interview is Microsoft, which I cracked. And all the 8 interviews, I never went to the last round. I was always rejected in the first 2 rounds. I have no clue why. Right? But it was definitely disheartening at that point of time. It's definitely more, I can tell it in a more jovial way, but at that point of time, it adds a lot of pressure, and I can understand that. I would say don't compromise on your mental health. Sorry, I'm deviating, but don't compromise on your mental health. Don't put that pressure on you that I have to clear this first round no matter what. No. concentrate on mastering the skill which is giving interview. That's it. You will crack any interview, any day, any year of your life, right? You concentrate on that aspect. So I would say concentrate on how do you hone your basics. Just keep brushing it up. Don't mug, don't by heart anything. Just keep brushing it up. When you're solving problems, focus on the theory or the basics, not on the problem or the solution. Focus on why they are applying this logic, why they are applying this specific or condition here. They could have done an and condition, they could have done an if condition or switch statement. Why are they using nested if versus a switch statement? Why are they not using it? Concentrate on that. That's where you're going to build your basics. And most importantly, exhibit learner mindset. It's really important. I can probably give a blanket statement as part of being a spokesperson of technical world or a technical industry or a corporate person, that we will look for someone who is learner mindset. We will not find happiness if we look at someone who is coming across know-it-all. So work on your learner's mindset, work on your basics, don't panic. Skill is to, the mastering of skill is not your basics or all that. Mastering the skill is how to give good interviews. So practice that as well. In the whole preparation, include that as well, so that you are practicing that aspect. And also, I would just say, go with the intention of knowing something that day. That's it. Maybe you'll learn how certain questions are coming up. Maybe you'll learn something new which will be useful for your next interview. So just go with that intention that this is a day where I'm learning for an hour, or I'm brainstorming with this person, or I'm getting an opportunity to talk to someone who is from Microsoft, who is working as a developer there. So it's an opportunity for me to learn what they do. So go with that aspect and not with the pressure that I have to clear it all. So that would be my summary.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Harsha. It was really insightful. Hope it inspired a lot of our candidates as well. And for those who are asking for the recording, you can find it in the community section of the MyCaptain app. And thank you all once again for joining us, and good night.
Thank you, Jacob. Stay safe, everyone, and choose to be happy. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.